Hope you're doing great. Whoops, let me get this screen a little the way I like it. Pardon me for being late. It was a not easy setup, and I couldn't even find my Satoshi hat. I had to use an old edition, the slightly orange sunburnt version that I wore all winter down in Barbados. So we had to get a new one when we came up, but that's okay. Lots of things going slow. Good morning, Simulation Warriors. Good morning, Ben. Robert, it is indeed Saturday already. Yeah, but we're doing great. We're doing great. Good morning, all. Bitcoin is up in a heavy downpour in Montreal. Indeed, P-Man, I am in Montreal, and it's beautiful. Sometimes too many days of nice weather, right? Good morning. Welcome to the Jewish Muslim War Clown World Edition. Should be pretty dumb. Yeah, we're not going to be talking much about Middle East today. I don't really care. Assalam, what does the manual say of Bitcoin in a post-apocalyptic world? I'm guessing we do barter system again and work our way up, maybe. It's going to be much better than that. It's going to be much better. Okay, don't worry about barter and all that stuff. We're going to be measuring nuclear markets in Bitcoin. That's all you need to know, right? Measuring nuclear energy markets and Bitcoin is the actual sign we're out of this. And it's about to happen. I'll explain today. We got big news, big news. We love big news. Good morning, Bitcoiners. Good morning, Daniel. I am out of Vermont. I am making my slow road to Amsterdam, where I will be Monday night with my family. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Habib. Hope you're doing great. Habib, you're making it, if I'm not mistaken, despite the time change from Australia. So thanks for coming, my man. The U.S. can't print weapons for Ukraine. Let's move on to another proxy conflict. We'll be talking about that, Felipe. You guys are anticipating the subjects perfectly. Excellent. Good morning, all. My cat and the best morning family on YouTube. Thanks, Thomas. I appreciate it, man. We love it. That should be the way we think about it, right? Psychologically scale what we're doing to like a small table having coffee, right? That's kind of what it is. It doesn't matter how big we grow. It's still going to be a table, morning coffee, and the headlines, right? You know what to not doom scroll about every day, right? Jevi, good morning, man. We've been through some Jevi, one of the earliest Bitcoin breakup gang members who was here for some of the darkest days, I would say, back when the FTX implosion was going on and all that. And we had a good time the whole time. So there you go. Nick, the Australians are loving the show these days, eh, Nick? We love it. We'll talk a little bit about Australia. Guten Tag, my lovely psychopaths. We're going to be psychopathing today, for sure. For sure. Habib, have you noticed that the new Pixel 8 has a thermometer? Oh, really? I didn't know that. That's pretty neat. I bet you the Apple one will be coming out soon. Good thing Elon's going to have to build a phone company, and we're not going to get any of these things. Good morning, world and USA. Indeed, Joseph and Johnny with a good morning. All right, let's just acknowledge it's as dark as you can imagine. No more beautiful sunrises. That part of the autumn looks to be over for a couple of days. It's gray, it's bleak, but Bitcoin's running. So we're good. Let's talk about crazy stuff. Let's talk about psycho stuff. But first, we need to just take a little stroll through the fake news. What's the fakest news we could find? Well, this one isn't so much fake, but it's just a really nice headline. I had to read it, right? Wall Street Journal, the totalitarian heart of Hillary Clinton. The 2016 election denier calls for formal deprogramming of Trump supporters. We love it. We love Hillary. Honestly, is one of the greatest things that ever happened to Bitcoin, to change in America. She's so absolutely unattractive and repulsive that it's good news, right? All right, so MSNBC, right? We love MSNBC. They're taking particular aim here at Republican Representative Nancy Mace, who is part of the coup. They call it a coup now. It's a coup, right? A vote by certain members, including their own party, the Democrats, who did the thing to get rid of the speaker. They call it a coup. right? It's a coup. The dark side, Republicans discover the dark side of Nancy Mace. And it's our friend Jahan Jones. He's one of our major contributors. I got to tell you, though, the new thing on Twitter where you can't actually share the headlines is a real pain in my ass. It really is hard. I got to click. I actually got to go to the websites again. You know how long it's been since I've had to go to MSNBC or CNN to harvest their fake news? It's been a long time. I haven't needed to. It's been all on X. You've been able to get everything there. I haven't had to go on a website of fake news distribution in a long time. Kind of irks me to have to go because once you enter the zone of them, you just feel the hands trying to go up your butt and into your brain and things like that. So anyway, I had to actually go on the sites, guys. So wish me luck if I have to keep doing this. I hope somehow this changes, but we don't know. So Jahan Jones, right, is going on about Nancy Mace, right? So he says that House Republicans are getting more familiar with the two faces of Representative Nancy Mace, right? But here's what they say. She ended up sharing a picture of her with the laser eyes. This is why it's funny, right? This is why it's fake news just for us Bitcoiners. It's a special bit of fake news for us, right? So you know how Dark Brandon, how Biden stole the laser eyes for himself to be Dark Brandon. Well, Jahan doesn't know anything about the history of laser eyes. And this is what he says. I don't imagine Republicans in the House will take kindly to Mace mocking them with a Biden-esque image. But they certainly should have seen this coming. Republicans have spent years rewarding shameless grifters for their political stunts. But now Mace seems to have mastered the game, so much so that her fellow GOPers want to pull the plug on her. I want to pull the plug on her. Oh, this is great, guys. This is amazing. So MSNBC is actually also in the movie making business now. They make like documentary films. Okay. So you remember what we say about documentary films? All of them. The genre is fake news, right? Even if it confirms what you want to hear and see, it's still a kind of fake news because there's no way anyone's pulling it straight. It's an essay. It's like this, right? In the sense that, you know, my angle, we're talking about Bitcoin, right? Like everything here is going to be designed and thought of and in the context of what's good for Bitcoin. It doesn't mean it's fake news, but it's an extremely biased medium, right? And anyone who says you saw a documentary and now you're more on one side, you don't know what's going on, right? The best example you can see of that are the documentaries on Michael Jackson that you can go on Amazon and watch, right? There's like competing documentaries. He's either a petter or he's not, right? And it depends on which one you watch, you'll be totally convinced. You can't actually watch it and keep your own opinion because it's designed to sway your opinion, right? So it depends really on which one you watched most recently, and that'll determine what you think about Michael Jackson, right? So it's the medium is designed to persuade you. So that's all you need to know about documentaries, right? They're not designed to make you armed with like more intelligence. That's not how they work. So always be suspicious of documentaries. Doesn't mean don't watch them. They're entertaining as heck. We all have confirmation bias and narrative bias, or to be annoyed by something that is so obtuse to what we think of that we'd have to watch it, right? But MSNBC now, they even call it MSNBC Films or something. Yeah, they have a Twitter handle, MSNBC Films. Okay, so here's the film that they actually have produced, and it's out. Okay, they're starting to pump it up, right? It's called Martha's Vineyard versus DeSantis. It's all about that time where DeSantis first started shipping people up to Martha's Vineyard, and they had their like weekend with immigrants in Martha's Vineyard, and they're still talking about it. They made a movie about it now. Here's what it is. It was a situation that I never imagined. They made it a sanctuary city. They never imagined people would come, right? Martha's Vineyard community coordinator Jeannie Relenti recalls the group of asylum seekers sent to the island community by Florida Governor DeSantis, right? And here's another part. Here's another sizzle reel they put out for it, right? Sunday, MSNBC Films presents Martha's Vineyard versus DeSantis. The documentary tells the story of the migrants flown to the New England island, the community that took them in, and the Florida governor behind it all. Yes, we're going to watch it. The people, Martha's Vineyard. We can't wait to hear what a tough weekend it was for them in Martha's Vineyard. Oh my gosh, right? Oh my gosh, we can't wait. This one is another chef's kiss of our fake news Moscow time instances. This is a medical one. Scientists discovered long colds may exist as well as long COVID. Everyone, you can get a long cold. So if you don't want to go to your work and you say, I had a cold the other day, but I think it's one of those long colds, and I think it's going to last for like 3 weeks, right? You can just get a long cold now. Don't worry, but guys, just get a long cold. You need to get out of work and you were sick last week, do it again. Long cold, right? I didn't get better. I got a long cold, right? So there you go. Just cite this. Long cold is a new thing, guys. All right. This is our last bit of fake news. This is our last Moscow time headline, but it relates to our theme for the day. All right. It relates to our theme for the day. And this is it, right? NBC News, one of our favorite. It's fake when it's MSNBC, but that's kind of in the dregs, right? That's kind of like fan fiction for people who really love fake news, right? So it's a little estranged from reality because you don't really get a diverse audience with it, right? It's like the Daily Wire is just going to get conservatives, right? They're not really going to branch out beyond conservatives. MSNBC is kind of the same thing. It's kind of like fan fiction for people who are already in the bag. But NBC, its parent company, it's minus the Microsoft and the Bill Gates part of it, right? Just the NBC part is, according to Glenn Greenwald and many others, right, the most obvious cutout of propaganda and psychological operations. And they've got an amazing headline today. One we've been anticipating for a long time, all right? And I'm going to give it to you because it is the most preemptive Moscow time maybe we've ever seen, right? Here it is. Ready? Mike Benz, conservative crusader against online censorship, appears to have a secret history as an alt-right persona, all right? Frame Game, the pseudonym of an alt-right internet personality, hid his face while pushing racist conspiracy theories. Inadvertent slips revealed details about his identity. So, and NBC, the whole network, not MSNBC, the big one, right? The one that hosts Saturday Night Live and all the other ridiculous shows, right? That one has a hit piece on Mike Benz, who we've been talking about for weeks, right? So now Mike Benz has a hit piece on him. What do they say in the hit piece? Of course, he's a Nazi. It's alt-right, right? Mike Benz. But here's some things I didn't know, right? Mike Benz, a former Trump State Department official whose work has been cited in congressional hearings and promoted by Elon Musk. What a jerk. Has become a go-to voice for Republican criticism of government and social media censorship in the past year. But before his stints in government and as a pundit, Benz appears to have been a pseudonymous alt-right content creator who courted and interacted with white nationalists and posted videos espousing racist conspiracy theories. He's a racist. Okay, now here's the fun part, right? You read down, like it's a super long article, so we don't need to read all these. Brandy wrote it, a girl named Brandy Zadrovsny, right? So thanks, Brandy. Brandy, we're not going to read your whole article, but you got to go way down. So apparently his pseudonym was Frame Game. Okay, so he was under Frame Game. Oh, the other things I didn't know. His first job with the administration was with Ben Carson, who I absolutely love. I think Ben Carson, if I had to go back, the only other candidate I loved in the 2016 election, and the one that I thought might have been a better person than Trump, a better vessel than Trump, was Ben Carson. I'm a huge fan of Ben Carson. I just don't think he cares about the politics and the stupidity, and he's probably a little, too good for the game in some ways. Well, that's hard to say, right? This is a pretty important thing for some people, but suffice it to say, Ben Carson, I think, is just one of the great Americans of all time. I'm a huge fan, right? Always has been. So Ben Carson's first gig in the Trump administration was in the housing thing, where he was going to try and fix some of the housing troubles in America. Didn't work out, I guess. But anyway, just to underline that Mike Benz had an in, which I recognize as an amazing one, right? And learning about this part of Mike Benz, to me, was also interesting because I've mentioned a few times how, I went into Bitcoin in 2013 because I knew the political process, let's say, just a second. I knew the political process was a little bit basically I knew it was over, right? I couldn't see a way out. I was working for a conservative administration, but we were getting absolutely destroyed by fake news and the media, and we didn't know how to play the game, right? Which is why the moment I saw Trump in 2015, after I'd already left politics and was 100% focused on Bitcoin, I said, this is going to work. This is the thing, right? What he's doing. And it got me really excited watching Trump fight back against the fake news and take a different posture than conservatives had taken before, and one that I thought was actually a winner, right? To hit back and punch back. And so I thought that was one of the great innovations of the time. And I remember in 2016, I was in New York City working with CoinDesk, and we had just launched the second edition of Consensus. And it would have been, like, for the Bitcoin history at that event itself was awesome, right? We had like Samurai Wallet unveiling, getting out of alpha and unveiling the whole project at a wider scale. These were like historic events back then. The 2016 one is the one where Craig Wright first did the fake news that he was Satoshi during our morning keynote when we opened the show, because he knew all the media was there. We already had like CNN and all the fake news at our show at the time. And it was actually a pretty funny scene, because we had the head of Bitcoin Core at the time, a guy named Gavin Andreessen, who was, sort of running Bitcoin Core upgrades. We had him start the show with Vitalik Buterin, who was still sort of somewhat involved in Bitcoin Magazine. Now, I guess Bitcoin Magazine was done for him by then. It had been about 2 years since he was no longer involved with Bitcoin. It was just doing Ethereum stuff. And so, to Vitalik's credit, I'll say what he did that morning, which was actually pretty neat, right, to see it live. So they were the news came out, and Gavin had just been tricked, right? That was the end of Gavin. Gavin died on stage that day, and so he was running Bitcoin, but he got tricked by he was tricked by Craig Wright's magic trick, right, which was some key stupid thing. And he was on our stage saying, maybe he is Satoshi, right? And people were like, what? The only person who knew and was able to deny it and was able to argue very clearly, and the argument still holds, was Vitalik. Vitalik said, why did you go for this magic trick? You can just send, if you are who you say you are, he could spend from his Genesis block mine, and he can prove he is who he says he is that easily. Why doesn't he spend some of the original Bitcoin? And Gavin was like, I never thought of that, right? He's a nice guy. I shouldn't be making fun of him. But Vitalik started spending from the Genesis block of Ethereum right on stage. Like, you just do this. Why doesn't he just do this? Why does he have to do the magic trick? So you got to give Vitalik credit for that, right? That was the actual kill shot. And that's what made me say this core Bitcoin dev is an idiot, right? If he fell for that. We didn't really know at the time, right? It was all happening at once. It was literally happening. It was a neat feeling, because we're getting ready for our show. Our show was about to start. We had sort of a big opening keynote from the governor of Delaware, right? It was kind of a big get at the time. And so we did that. And the first panel of the morning, and we were all really excited, but the fake news started coming out, right? We knew what had happened. We were all sort of talking about it, like, oh, what's going on? And now we're going to hear from Gavin right away. He's going to be able to respond. He knows, right? Is this Satoshi? So we know he's not Satoshi. We know Craig Wright is not Satoshi. Don't worry. We're not here promoting Craig Wright, okay? We don't even talk. We don't even care. We've never cared. I haven't cared since that day. I've never for one moment believed he was, and never failed in it, never doubted it, never was like, oh, maybe, right? No, it was never. I used to say Craig Wright is the Satoshi we deserve, right? For being such, idiots at the time and getting so involved in crypto and get rich quick schemes and all that. I used to say it as an insult to the industry for, getting too caught up in, making money. But I'm all for making money. Don't get me wrong, right? Again, I've said many times, if you're not participating in generational financial crimes against old boomers who want to like get in on Ripple, you don't know what game we're playing here, right? So that's just me. But at the time, there was a lot of, let's say, antagonism towards the ICO thing, which we could all sort of see coming, and this and that. So anyway, all this to say, long roundabout, when I was in New York for that trip. At the same time as all this stuff was going on, Trump basically won the nomination that weekend, and because he won Texas against Ted Cruz, and that meant that there was no way he could lose, even though Ted Cruz hadn't dropped out at the time. It made a situation where Trump, was de facto the candidate for the 2016 election, and so he had a big party at Trump Tower that night, and I was invited. A lot of people were going over. I was gonna, but I had this sort of choice in life, right? At that moment, I could go with the Bitcoin people and party doing Bitcoin stuff, or I could go to this political thing. And I'd already left politics. So, I just said, I'm not going to do anything with this administration. I'm done, right? I'm not getting involved in this stuff. As much as I love Trump, the path is elsewhere for me. So when I see folks like Mike Benz that did join that administration, I think of it in I can imagine their feeling at the time, and I can imagine how excited they would have been. And so I just like to hear these stories and see these people and wonder if I would have met him in that other life. But now that everything has sort of come together in the world, right? Now that we have the election system, which is really an engineering question, which we understood at the time as Bitcoiners because we were dealing with scaling. We understand the trade-offs. We understand what's really going on without the hyperbole, right? And this guy, Mike Benz, is one of those people. And he said yesterday in a tweet, so I'll say two things. So first of all, let me just mention what's so fake about this article, right? So they call him all these names, white supremacists. You got to read down like 1,000 words till you get to the point where they start saying, well, he's Jewish. He's Jewish, right? They go on and on about how much he criticizes Jewish people. And then honestly, 3/4 of the way through a 1,500 word hit piece, you find out that he's Jewish. Which I knew, but just funny to watch how they won't talk about it, right? So here they just go in, what is frame game? And he said some stuff, and he has friends that you wouldn't like, and he's talked to people. He also amplified the so-called Twitter files, which is how the NBC has to say it, right? Documents, and they have to even say what the Twitter files are because their audience is so out of touch. They wouldn't know what you're talking about. If you just said the Twitter files, you ever said that to normies? But the Twitter files, and they'll go, what? What do you mean? They don't even know, right? So documents released by Musk that revealed internal debates about content moderation and communications with outside organizations. That's what it was. It was just the Twitter files only revealed internal debates about content moderation. And it was just between organizations, governments, journalists, and researchers. Normal content moderation between them is normal, right? For months in videos and threads posted on Twitter, Benz has framed those internal debates as grand conspiracies and maligned the academic researchers and institutions involved in government, involved as government spies and plants, right? Beyond the censorship debate, that's all they talk about. That's it, right? Beyond that now. It's beyond the censorship debate. Beyond the censorship debate, Benz has posted videos alleging a variety of shadowy doings in line with broader far-right paranoia around many hot-button issues. One video connecting criticism of Musk to a conspiracy theory around Ukraine and global energy markets was posted by Musk, who added interesting perspective, right? So he wrote a post saying maybe some connections in energy, right? And Musk retweeted it, and that's an indictment of him in this fake news article, right? It was so good that Musk retweeted it, so it must be stupid. There have been a handful of intellectual experts who have risen to some prominence on the right and were later outed for the previous extremist rhetoric. The slow normalization of extremist figures who have become part of the fabric of our discourse are moving our discourse further and further to the right, and their tactics are becoming embedded into our institutions, says Nora Benavides, the senior counsel at Free Press. She goes on to say, a review of Frame Game posts and appearances from 2017 to 2018 ran the gamut of alt-right issues, rants against social justice movements, the media and Disney films, and praise for Trump. And here's what it says. Odes to cryptocurrency. So Mike Benz, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say Mike Benz is a Bitcoiner, right? I'm going to say that. If that's what this article is saying, and they've gone back into Frame Game and he's going on about crypto, I would imagine by now he's learned the difference. And if he hasn't, we're going to teach him. Don't worry. We're going to get Mike Benz on the good team, right? So they go on here. So here's finally where they say, right? In a blog post from 2017, Frame Game described himself as a Jew who was deeply sympathetic to the alt-right's accurate depiction of the double-edged nature of Jewish influence on America and Europe. A former self-described libertarian, Frame Game credited alt-right provocateur Milo Yiannopoulos as putting the puzzle together and opening his eyes, right? The broadcast I watched during the night Trump won, if I wasn't outside having a party and bragging and having a great time and, just loving life, I was watching Milo Yiannopoulos's live stream. Milo Yiannopoulos went to the headquarters of all the media the night of the election. There was like a central station for all the broadcasters in New York City. And they were all depressed, right? And they were all like, oh, low energy. It was all the people in all these different rooms. And everyone would have their own kind of room. Like it was the Fox room and the whatever. And it was supposed to be a big party. So he runs through there, all right, with his live stream and just points out how low energy and depressed they all are. And he starts eating all their ice cream and drinking all their drinks. And he's like, these are the people that are telling you what to think. Look at these ugly losers. Right. So I got to meet Milo Yiannopoulos in New York around that time and had a great chat with him. I was actually on my way to a fake news TV hit on Bloomberg, and he was just walking up the street with me. So I was like, hey, Milo, we chatted. It was a good time. So we walked all the way from 50th to probably 60th or 63rd, I think. I can't remember where the Bloomberg offices were, but, sort of up that way towards Central Park. So there they go. Now, the reason I mentioned this about Ben's getting the hit piece here is two reasons. So let me tell you the theme for the day, first of all, because it's related to this and it's related to something he said the other day, but here's what it is, right? So Mike Benz yesterday posted the following: what Hillary Clinton called formal re-education is not a distant hypothetical dystopia. It's here. It's been here for years, government funded. It goes by the name media literacy. How often do we talk about media literacy here? We talk about Bitcoin being the number one catalyst for financial literacy in the world. In the history of planet Earth, there's nothing that's been more effective at teaching the complex story of financial literacy, the intricacies, what's going on. There's nothing that's been more successful in laying to rest the Austrian versus Keynesian debate, all that shit, right? Even I, as a ignorant university student, was still drawn into this ridiculous Keynesian versus Austrian school debate as if there was some logical answer. It was not. It was just competing visions of how we should organize ourselves, and there's no longer debate about it, right? Bitcoin was able to create the contrast where you could see the answer very easily. And so here we are, right? Understanding exactly what's wrong with fiat. We didn't have it. When counterfeiters, I've mentioned this before, right? When counterfeiters, anti-counterfeiters, especially in ancient or old times, anti-counterfeiters to this day don't actually learn the examples of good counterfeiting and get familiar with those. What they do, what their technique, what their system is to familiarize themselves with the authentic. So they get to know the real thing so well that they can tell anything that's not the real thing. We didn't have that until we had invented actual money. Until Satoshi had actually invented money, there was no way to understand what real money was. We had no ability to get familiar with the authentic. There was no way. It was just a bunch of cheap facsimiles of money that required courts and aircraft carriers in order to mobilize and distribute and disseminate. And so, but it worked. We did it. It was fine for a little while, but we still didn't really know what we were talking about. And when Satoshi invented money, which I say all the time, we had facsimiles, we had things that were proximate to money, but they weren't actually money. They were able to do it for a little while, but Satoshi literally invented money. And so when we could now familiarize ourselves with what was real money, it became very simple to see what was fake. And that has caused a huge psychic change in a lot of people, right? So I'll go on. This is what he says, right? And it hasn't been just financial literacy we've learned, right? Bitcoiners have learned energy literacy as a result. And I would say media literacy, which is what we talk about a lot, right? I think that the P2P electronic cash network has also created an approximate P2P media network where there is no more centralized journalism. The same orders of distribution, dissemination, and broadcast that are prevalent in a top-down fiat banking system that require commercial banks and things like that in order to motivate itself and go forward, is exactly replicated in the news media. It's exactly replicated in the news media. It's the same thing, right? It is a centralized system with a kind of clearinghouse of truth and fiction, organized by a few untrustworthy third parties, right? So Bitcoiners instantly had to create media and environments where we could talk about Bitcoin without getting poisoned by all this other stuff. That's why Bitcoin meetups have been so successful. That's how I ended up in the Bitcoin event space, right? Because it is an efficient way to disseminate this information and gather more and more people into seeing the world this way. So here's what he says, though. He says it goes by the name media literacy. So the formal re-education thing he's talking about, right, is not fake. They're doing it already with advanced psychological persuasion techniques used through the media. Military grade persuasion techniques that have been around for a lot longer than most of us realize, and we're only starting to understand how long they've been influencing our society and culture. We've come to the conclusion that we don't live in the world we thought we did. We never have, right? It has never been what we thought it was. It was close, but not quite there, right? So here's how he goes on, right? And its tools. So these are the tools of media literacy. He says they include pre-bunking, the redirect method, and a psychological vaccination, right? That's what we do here, right? That's what we do here. He calls it pre-bunking. We called it persuasion, right? Kind of the same thing. You can be persuaded to manipulate you, but you can be persuaded to protect yourself. If you know something is coming, it's much easier to defend against it. If you say this is the thing that will happen, and then it happens, its effect is quite lost, right? It's a part of a vaccination process. So what did we read on the show 3 days ago, right? What did Mike Benz tweet 3 days ago, right? He says, they have to kill me because I'm spilling their secrets. Here's how it'll go. First, they'll flood me with hit pieces on bullshit rhetoric grounds. He wrote this on October 2nd, right? It is October 7th today. It's 5 days after he wrote this tweet. We've got our first NBC hit piece, not an MSNBC hit piece, the top of the heap NBC hit piece, right? First, they will flood with hit pieces on bullshit rhetoric grounds, right? Well, he got that one right, you know? Then we go. Then they'll flood with lawsuits on bullshit tort grounds, right? So that by that, they're not going to be able to find like victims of his crimes, right? They're going to make that up. Then they'll flood with bullshit charges on criminal grounds. Bookmark this, he says, right? So looks like it, right? Looks like that's what's happening. But the good news is we've learned enough of this stuff. We've seen this stuff coming, right? We told you that the SEC was coming after Musk, that all this shit would be aligned against him, right? Where are we? Well, they're trying to run all of these hit pieces on him. SEC suing him, which we were mentioning yesterday. And Wall Street Silver here saying the SEC is going after Elon related to Twitter. The Biden DOJ is suing SpaceX for not hiring refugees on top secret rocket technology. The DOJ and SEC are investigating Tesla because of a glass house. Here's the and then remember the interview that Elon gave. My frame about Elon Musk and the SEC has always been this, right? When he got into Doge, right, I believed he was trolling the SEC, trying to get in trouble the whole time. The whole time. That was my theory, right? Now I'm a little partial to Doge because I never told people to go get Litecoin. It was always you had to pay money for Litecoin. It was a scam from the start, right? Doge in the early days of Bitcoin was free and available in faucets. And I used to always tell kids, if I would give a class, everyone used to say, I'm worried about losing Bitcoin. I don't know about Bitcoin. I would say to everyone, go to a Doge faucet, get some Doge, and don't be afraid to lose it, right? So I actually made a lot of people pretty rich by getting them into Doge in the early days and telling people Doge is the test net. Doge is what you want to do to play around and learn how to transact and interact with cryptocurrencies. And it'll make you much more confident when you actually deal with Bitcoin. So go play with Doge if that's your worry. If you want to just learn how to handle it and you don't want to fear losing something that's valuable, go get Doge, right? So I think in some ways, Elon might have seen the same thing. And Elon, seeing the same thing, realized he could pick a real fight with the SEC using Doge because it had so many sympathetic followers and things like that. Now, I have no idea if that's true in Elon's case. That's just how I interpreted it, because I knew that he was waging war against the SEC because that's what I could see, right? So here we are, and they're waging war back, right? We see it. But we're learning these techniques. We're learning how to protect ourselves from this stuff. And here's a great example of exactly what I'm talking about, right? You get Christopher Ruffo. You know, the guy who everyone gives, they're trying to call him all these names. You're going to hear about them in a second. A little bit like Mike Benz, right? This is someone who is psychologically vaccinated from hit pieces now. He's the guy DeSantis has put in charge of reforming higher education in Florida, and I think made him the head of some Freedom University or something like that, where there'll never be DEI. It's a classical education. So it starts off, right? This is a daily Beast headline. Influential anti-woke activist is open to working with racists and fascists, right? So that's their headline. So right away, Chris Ruffo knows what's going on and isn't going to take this hit piece, right? This is one of the things that Trump has taught everybody, to hit back, right? This is where conservatives were so stupid 10 years ago, where, you know, Harper had this problem. Harper in Canada, Stephen Harper, the prime minister before Trudeau, the reason why I knew it wasn't going to last, he believed that if he was just a better person, right, just like more disciplined, more conservative, that the media would respect him and leave him alone or something, right? That I think anyway, tried to message or fight back against them with messaging tightness, and the ability to not have anything to criticize, but that was never going to work, right? They destroyed him, which I knew was going to happen, and why I said you got to destroy the CBC when you have the chance. You have to do all of these things, otherwise you're not going to get the chance again. They will destroy you. But people have learned, and Trump has taught. Trump is guilty of this himself, right? Trump, I hope, has learned the hard way. When Cernovich and a lot of the other Trump supporters abandoned him in 2017 for going with the GOP and Paul Ryan and all of these people, they thought he was making the same mistake. They thought, you know, that Trump would get swallowed up by them. And in some ways he has, right? In some ways we shouldn't even be in this position if Trump was smarter about a lot of this stuff. Now, I love Donald Trump, right? And I've said a million times, be very careful when you're out there thinking you know better than him, right? But I still think on this, he was wrong. He should never have been in bed with these people. Losing Cernovich and these other people into 2020 was not helpful for him, right? He needed these people to win. It looks like he's got them back with all the trouble that he's going through. The Democrats have themselves to thank for that, right? Their continued obsession with punishing him is why he's even a likely next president, right? So here's what Chris Ruffo has done, right? So right away, you should see some of the stuff they said too, right? So he right away threatened to sue them, right? And said this is all obviously fake news, defamation. So they had to put an editor's note in it. The headline of this story has been updated to delete that Ruffo is open to working with racists and fascists, which Ruffo had explicitly denied. We have updated the story accordingly, an added comment from Ruffo. So here's what he says. Scalped. The Daily Beast has become to retract its false and defamatory claims against me. Fearing legal action, the publication deleted the story's headline, edited or added 4 full paragraphs, and appended multiple editor's notes to walk back its smear campaign. This is supremely embarrassing retraction for the Daily Beast, which is notable given the publication's long-standing lack of standards. Their smear backfired, discrediting them, not me. Let it serve as a warning. I say don't let it serve as a warning. Let it serve as a model, right? Warning is one thing. They're not going to be afraid of it, right? You got to copy this. You got to model it. You got to do it. This is what Trump is doing. This is what Musk is doing, right? You have to be creative and fighting against it, because that's part of the counteraction of this. That's part of the vaccination, right? So again, it's why I say that Satoshi actually invented the survival guide to this stuff, because the survival guide is to have the same amount of skepticism you would to trusted third parties and banks as you would to have trusted third parties in media dissemination. Fiat is a system of words. They require the broadcast network to disseminate those words. That is how the nodes keep in sync. If the word projection machines don't sync up the way they used to, the network falls. It doesn't work anymore, right? And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing the network literally collapse because the words do not disseminate as evenly as they once did, or saturate the minds of the passive consumers of these words as quickly as it once did, right? So that's why we end up with these situations we end up in, right? Where just look at the fiasco at the border now, right? So did you see Peter Ducey's question, right? So he was there with the one Karine Jean-Pierre, right, who just doesn't know what she's talking about. And so here's the thing about the border, right? Remember, they had the Trump border wall, and then they never put it in, and it was all rusty, and they were selling the parts off for a huge loss, right? And now what they're doing is they're saying it's not our fault. It's the money was paid for. We have to build a wall and this and that, right? But Peter Doocy asks her, right, because they've been tearing wall down, right? And then they say they have to put it up, right? There's a law that allows them. This is what she said, right? The lady, Karine Jean-Pierre. There was a law that allowed them to tear it down, right? But there was a law that forced them to put it up. And so Peter Doocy asks her, are you going to tear down the wall once you put it up? So that's where they're ending. That's where they are, right? And now you can just hear that they, this is bad news for them simply because so much of their cohort, so much of their supporters, that was the one reason why they voted for Biden. He wasn't going to build a wall. And now he's building a wall, right? Colin Rugg says the following: after quite literally saying there is an immediate need to construct physical barriers at the southern border, Secretary Mayorkas says, we are all taking him out of context. The utter incompetence of this administration is astounding. In an attempt to gaslight the American people, Mayorkas says there is no need for a border wall, just hours after saying there was. From day one, this administration has made clear that the border wall is not the answer. That remains our position, and our position has never wavered, right? That's what they're going with. So let them do it, right? Let them do it. Pre-bunking. This is another good pre-bunking one. Remember what we said the other day about the stabbing in New York, right? Did we remember 2 days ago we gave a formula for what's about to happen with the journalists and the fella? He would have his face blacked out. He did, right? Here's a follow-up on that. As arrest made, murdered NYC activist pals run GoFundMe to take time off work. So we're 3/4 of the way through all the predictions that people made the other day about what was happening with this case in New York, right? Now, the reason I say that is because predicting this stuff is important, right? That's why predictions are important. Pre-bunking, persuasion is really important for this kind of stuff. We did it this summer. Remember, we did it this summer. We said this summer, I bet the next time Hunter Biden is in the news and it's a big story, you're going to get an aliens story, right? You can actually tie them in this year. There's 3 ways of seeing it. Anytime Hunter's in trouble, it's aliens or another action against Trump, each and every time, right? So we said this at the start of summer that you were going to see this pattern, and it played out exactly as we said. Was it a coincidence? Yeah, we love Anomaly. Yeah, we're big fans of Anomaly. I think we're talking about him yesterday, right? Yeah, I'm total fan of Anomaly. Total fan, right? Seems like a honest guy. There you go. Some people say this. Here's a hot take: Trump's arrest was organized. Ann Coulter is saying this on PBD. Yeah, I don't take Ann Coulter seriously anymore. I think she's got her own case of TDS. A bit like what's the guy, Sam Harris. Look, I think that is possibly true that they wanted him instead, but that would just be another sign of their stupidity and incompetence. Trump only doesn't quite offset enough people. I think we saw maximum Trump hatred in the last election. I don't think you can conjure more Trump hatred than in 2020. I don't think. It might be possible. These people are good. But here's again here's another case. This is Trump and the Letitia James thing, right? The court case and all that stuff. So here's what we know. The judge in the case decided no jury. He's going to give a summary judgment, right? And Trump is guilty, right? And this is the whole Mar-a-Lago valuation case, right? One of the dumbest you'll ever hear. So Letitia and Judge said, "Oh, he's guilty. We don't even need to go to trial. I'm just going to say how guilty he is, and that'll be the end," right? But of course, that's not how it works, right? So he did that, but then the New York Appeals Court have come in and said that the ruling is stupid, and they're going to go and see it, and he's going to get a real civil trial where he's actually going to get his jury. So it's clear that there was simply no case, right? Letitia, the girl, the AG, who can't read a teleprompter because she's not that smart, right? That lady who has compilation videos of her saying, "We're going to get Trump and we're going to get the illegitimate president out of there," and like just totally being personally biased against the guy, and is on record. And she's trying to do these calm videos where she says, "Oh, this is not personal. No one is above the law," as she's reading off a teleprompter, but she can't. I don't think she can see very clearly. I don't know how she reads, but she's okay, I guess. Eric Trump says the following: We thank the Appellate Division for staying the New York Attorney General and Judge Engoron's overzealous attempt to cancel our New York business certificates. The judge's order erroneously sought to adjudicate the rights of non-party business entities that employ over 1,000 hardworking New Yorkers. So imagine they would have put 1,000 New Yorkers out of work just to fulfill their goals. They've never been accused of wrongdoing and were never given their day in court, in clear violation of the fundamental constitutional rights and due process. We will continue to vigorously defend our company and our incredible employees from this politically motivated persecution. Right. So there you go. That's what we're looking at. Now we can make a couple fun predictions. Right. So that's as much vaccination as we need. That's as much vaccination as we need. Let's do a little pre-bunking, which I guess is more vaccination, right? Let's do a bit more pre-bunking. So first of all, War Clandestine says the following. He says, overall vibe from the establishment is that they are giving up on Ukraine. The MSN will need a new narrative to focus on, and the deep state will need a new cash cow leading into the 2024 elections. Keep an eye on Taiwan. The SBF trial says the following, right? So put these things together. So just keep in mind what we just said about Ukraine and money laundering. Gary Wang testified yesterday for the FTX trial in New York as well. A lot of court stuff happening in New York. He says, here's the question from the prosecutor. Did you commit financial crimes while working at FTX? Answer, yes. What types of crimes did you commit? Wire fraud, securities fraud, and commodities fraud. Did you commit these crimes by yourself or with other people? With other people. Who were the main people you committed the crimes with? Sam Bankman-Fried, Nishant Singh, and Caroline Ellison. You're talking about Alameda Research. Yes. Okay, we'll come back to that in a minute. When you say you withdrew unlimited amounts of funds, whose funds were you talking about? Customers. Let's talk, and customers of what? Alameda Research. Customers of FTX. Mr. Wang, do you see any of the people who committed those crimes with you in court today? Yes. Who do you see? Sam Bankman-Fried. Let the record reflect the witness has identified the defendant, right? So here talking about the special privileges and what I suspected from way before this was a story, right? Way before this was a story. Something was going on in Ukraine, right? With these folks. Now, hold on. I have one thing out of place here. So, anyway, here's what we can predict, right? We can predict that either the next enemy, instead of Ukraine, is going to be domestic, and it's going to be these MAGA folks they're saying are the big obstacle, right? So we've been saying it for a while. We've got Cernovich, who's been calling this for a while. We'll see, but it looks like that's where things are headed. Now, they can say Ukraine. It'll depend on the money. Now that the money is cut off in America, we'll see how they'll figure out how to do the money laundering. They might not need to. We'll see, but we'll find out in the next little bit. My prediction is they're going to have to find some form of conflict somewhere. There's no way around it, right? They can't just use MAGA because it's not foreign. You need the money laundering outlet. So some people saying the MAGA people are going to be next. Maybe. I think Bitcoiners are going to get on the list. In the same way that we've been talking about the gold thing, right? If you're into gold, you're with Putin. If you're into that is going to become an issue, right? Now, Putin yesterday has So things are going nuclear, let's say, right? So my belief on the next scandal, the next focus, it's going to be nuclear. Putin gave nuclear uranium, I think, yesterday or something to Bangladesh, maybe another country. Let me see where he gave it to. Bangladesh, right? So initial delivery yesterday of Russian uranium to Bangladesh's first nuclear power plant. America and Putin are fighting over uranium now, right? That goes back to Hillary and Uranium One, I think, right? We're going to find out more about that. Now, the Trump story is also turning into Australia, right? Australia, what Mike Benz has been telling us for a while, it is a CIA airstrip, not a country. And that a lot of these stories, like Russia collusion, emanate out of Australia. So now the documents hoax, the Mar-a-Lago documents hoax, is turning into more nuclear stuff, right? The Washington Post and New York Times yesterday, 2 headlines: Trump's classified documents problems go nuclear again. That's Washington Post. The New York Times: Trump said to have revealed nuclear submarine secrets to Australian businessman. But meanwhile, Catherine Herridge, the only journalist who's been saying the Hunter Biden thing was real for a long time, right? For a long time, been saying it for a long time, that was real. And she even hired like a forensic identifier for the thing, and she ran a real piece in CBS News that Hunter Biden was actually suspicious. Here's what she says about yesterday, right? So the New York Times and Washington Post still running these stories about Trump with his nuclear problems. She says, sources tell CBS News there is no indication former President Trump shared sensitive records with an Australian billionaire, plus no charges have been filed by the special counsel through their alleged discussion about U.S. nuclear subs. And that was investigated, right? So ALX on Twitter, at ALX, says, that's not going to stop the 2 biggest sources of fake news and misinformation, the Washington Post and New York Times, from running with it, right? So now we know beyond all shadow of a doubt, that Washington Post, New York Times, absolutely fake news disseminators, totally not credible, running stories that even CBS says are not real, right? So think about that nuclear question, right? Think about gold. Think about this nuclear proliferation question becoming probably at the forefront of everything. At the same time, you've got uranium having a total market change, right? I forgot to get the name of the guy who wrote this on Twitter. I only have the screenshot of what he says. But this is what he's saying and this is from apparently the world's foremost authority in uranium markets and nuclear markets and things like that. And he says, this. He says, market transformation, deep dive into how 2023 has transitioned the uranium market from inventory supply driven to production driven, a scenario unseen in decades. 2, speculation versus reality. He discusses the shift in the uranium market from being driven by excess inventories to one that is production driven, largely due to various forces absorbing the excess, notably speculative interest in Sprott, Yellowcake, and ANU, as well as several other entities. This shift hasn't occurred in decades. Global demand spike, price projections, the value of the Uranium Royalty Corporation, the future of uranium, decipher the bullish stance on uranium as an irreplaceable energy asset driven by stable, secure supply needs and the advent of innovations like small modular nuclear reactors. So that's what's going on, right? And yesterday, the Standard Power folks chose NuScale's small modular nuclear reactor, and you're going to have what we've been saying for a long time. It looks like it's official. Now, we've seen Nuclear power plants have Bitcoin mines attached. This is an SMR, totally different. First ever, announced yesterday. Uh, uh, Bitcoin miner working with a small modular nuclear reactor to do what? I think change the entire world. I think that's what's happening. So the nuclear question is going to come straight into foreign policy in the United States quickly, real quick. I think we're here, right? But the marketplace for it is going to have a major effect and is going to, I think, tie the hands of American authorities and how much fake news they can run and how many psyops they can run. I think we're getting vaccinated from their capacity. And when I think of the nuclear energy and Bitcoin siding up to it, it looks like we have the conditions for what we've been talking for a long time, Bitcoin becoming the reference rate for energy, which will actually create a separation of money and state because enough rich people are not going to want to keep tying to the government. They're going to want to be on their own, and we're going to have a natural schism between private enterprise and government because the energy and the money are both going to be out of the equation. And it doesn't look like we're far now. It looks like we have enough media literacy to get us there. So the next big focus for us is going to be the criminality of nuclear proliferation and Bitcoin's role in it. But it's going to be great. It's going to be great. We're going to win. All right, let's see what we got. So I think I have this correct. If you question anything, you are racist. Yeah, that's generally been the way. Yeah. NBC will do a breakup hit piece in 3, 2, 1. Yeah, we would love it. We want a hit piece. We want a hit piece, 100%. Had an awesome conversation with you, Nolan, after day one of cool, man. Yeah, glad I found the show. Awesome, John. Great, man. I appreciate it. Here's a hot take. Trump's run. Oh yeah, that's the one we already read. Anomaly's opinion too. Yeah, it could be. Could be. Yeah. Could be. Yemeni. Yeah, I don't really know what's going on over there. I don't really know what's going on. I am generally a fan of Israel, but not the government, that's for sure. Well, it depends on which side of the government, but where is Milo nowadays? I don't know. I think Milo's got some mental health issues personally. He got into that big fight with Ali Alexander, and I think he did a lot that was no good to the Kanye campaign. So I don't know what's going on with Milo. I know he hates Trump, hates him, thinks Trump ruined his life and things like that. But I don't know if that's true. Milo, I think, was lightning in a bottle in that 2016 timeframe. I'll always have said. I mean, I was actually just the other day looking at the agenda for that show and just getting a rush of memories about what it was like to be early Bitcoin in those years and how exciting it was and great days, man. Great days. All right. That's about all I got for today, guys. Let me know if I missed anything. Mike Benz, great prediction, right? We're all inoculated. We got the psychological vaccination of Bitcoin. We got P2P media literacy. Jevi asks if Karine gets space drop. I don't think so. I think she's fine. My impression is she's dumb. Like, I don't think she knows it's a scam, right? But look, there was just look at the world we live in. Check this out. This almost made the list a couple days ago of things to talk about, but it didn't quite get there. There was a party for her. Listen to this. This is why I think she's stupid. I don't think she knows what's going on. So here you go. There was a party announcement out and about. A bunch of names. Hosted dinner last night to celebrate White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, and some of the other names are Joy Reid and but I don't recognize these names. But luckily, Philip Letsu recognized them, and he says just the presidents of ABC News and MSNBC and multiple major journalists all at a dinner party celebrating the current White House Press Secretary. So that was 2 days ago. That was 2 days ago. I think they just flatter her and she's a moron. That's all that's going on. She reminds me of every idiot with a political science degree. So who believes this stuff? She believes it. I think she's dumb enough to believe the lies she's being told to say. I don't detect a liar. I don't. I detect low IQ. That's all I detect. Low IQ. I could be wrong. But maybe not so much low IQ. Maybe I'm mistaking low IQ with just heavy layers of indoctrination that she can't fight through. I think of her more as a blind moron that, like, when we talk about, would you get mad at a blind person for hitting you, right? What if a blind person bumped into you? Would you scream and drop them from space? No, right? Corinne Jean-Pierre is a blind person. I mean, I mean, she'll smile if they would drag you to the gulags, but so would half of them. So you can't kill all of them, right? We're not going to need that. So, I wouldn't get mad at a blind person. We have to have, honestly, one of the ways out is all of these people out there that are getting that aren't psychologically vaccinated, that don't know about pre-bunk, the people who actually think the news is straight, right? You got to feel sorry for them. Like I feel bad for what the news has done to them, to think they live in a world that's got white supremacists all around and they don't know the difference between a hoax and reality. Imagine you lived in a world like, I think even Letitia James, I think there's a whole bunch of people in this world, and I think they actually think Trump is Hitler, right? Because they've been told by persuasive forces. That's the thing, she's a victim of manufactured consent. I think so. I could be wrong. If I find out there's difference, yeah, she's a candidate for sure, but she doesn't strike me as in on it. You know what I mean? I think she just sits there in meetings and is like, well, Felipe, that's what I believe is going to happen. Yeah, I believe that's why it's going to happen. These aren't the smartest people in the world we're dealing with. That's the good news. The good news is Karine Jean-Pierre is the best they got. Think about it this way. Their entire scheme rests on Janet Yellen selling T-bills to foreign countries still. That is it. If she doesn't come through, they're sending Janet Yellen on a sales mission. And if she doesn't come through, they're screwed. They got to get money laundering going and all this shit, right? So they just don't I think they're fine. I think all of these people are fine. And the system works when it's just the people you don't have to see and who aren't accountable for stuff that are the operators. The minute they have to put someone in front of someone, they've got to be okay with it, right? They've got to be okay with it. So you either get really good liars like Adam Schiff, who now he got DEI'd out of his job anyway. He's not going to win the Senate in California anymore. He's a white guy. It's over. They got the new one. She's done. She's going to win. So how happy do you think Adam Schiff is now? Right. So, Janet needs to hit her sales targets. Yeah. So, what do you think her chances of hitting her sales targets are? You think the Japanese are buying her thing? That's all they got, guys. That's it. So there's only so many liars that are willing to go on the books for these people. That's why you see people quitting, right? That's why you see people running away from them. There's only so many. Hunter's lawyer ran away yesterday. Did you know that? Hunter's lawyer on the gun thing, and that's the easiest one. I don't want Hunter convicted on a gun crime at all, right? That's the easiest one for Hunter. No, I don't think there's any conservatives out there saying get Hunter's guns. I don't think there's any MAGA people, any Republicans, not many Bitcoiners out there saying, oh, the problem with Hunter is the guns, right? His lawyer has abandoned him on the gun thing, right? Imagine, on the gun thing, gone. So the gun thing was never a winner, right? I believe crackheads should have guns. I don't have a problem with that, right? Even crackheads, even the crackheads. So Hunter gets a gun in my book. And I don't think he's out there shooting people, right? I don't think we have to worry about Hunter shooting criminals with his gun. If he wants a gun, he can have a gun. So even his lawyers abandoned him. I think you're going to see a lot of rats fleeing the ship. But these are the ones who are smart enough to know what's going on. The ones who are a little clueless, right? They don't know when to leave. They don't know the dangers. They're like that guy who walked down the street in New York this weekend and was like, chill, buddy, dead, dead. Again, do you know I'm still, do you know that I'm still laughing? I haven't stopped laughing at the Michael Malice joke. Because both of those journalists, I've said it before. I got to say it one more time. Those journalists spent just last weekend criticizing Scott Adams' prediction that Republicans would be hunted if they lost the 2020 election. So they went out of their way to criticize him years later. Okay. So the weekend the guy in Philly died, and the same weekend the guy in New York died, but the guy in New York was trolling Scott Adams a little earlier with like one of these like intellectual criticisms. So, it was like, you don't even really know what he's trying to say. It's so wishy-washy. So Michael Malice picked up on the coincidence of these people criticizing Scott Adams on the same weekend they died, to the very violence that he was warning against. And Michael Malice said, so there's the coincidence. He goes, "We live in a simulation." Well, not Josh. I've said it before. I can't stop laughing about it. Everything in the news right now is funny, by the way. Like, I know it's darker and more dangerous than ever, right? Like, I see that it's super dangerous and dark out there right now, right? Like, I get it. They're talking about gulags and deprogramming, but it's Hillary Clinton out there talking about deprogramming, saying that Trump has no credibility, right? So, like, yeah, his new book is fire. 1 second. Yeah, by the way, his ghostwriter is also my ghostwriter. I used Josh Lysick for the thing, right? For Satoshi Wedding Murders. So I know Josh well. He's a cool, really cool guy. Yeah, I've got all of Scott Adams' books. Not the Dilbert one, sorry, but the new ones. Yeah. And look, that's what I continue to mean about the P2P psychological vaccination network, and why in inventing money, in inventing a P2P electronic cash system, Satoshi also invented media literacy, in a sense, because we now have a P2P network in order to inoculate ourselves against the psychological invasion of fiat currency, which is word-based money, right? Bitcoin is also a psychological commodity, 100%. Never forget that, right? It is a psychological commodity. But what it does protect you from is the psyops of the fiat money system, just as well as it allows you to have money and invented money and allows you to transact and send money across the world and blah, 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 blah. But the same way they isolated the untrustworthy third parties in the financial system, we've been able to see them in the censorship industrial complex. So because of that, because of the broadcast system being integral to the fiat node propagation, we get it. We get it. We're media literate. We are actually vaccinated from the psychological operations being run on the American population currently. So that's our major way we're going to win, right? The psychological commodity of money being driven by people whose psychological condition is much more powerful. And that's why I continue to go back to the conquistadors versus the Montezuma and all these people down in pre-whatever, Mexico at the time. It was 100 and something conquistadors, but their weapons were better. They were more well armed for the time they were in. So 150 people wiped out an army of 15 to 20,000, like easily. It was a walk in the park, right? So I continue to believe that if you add up Elon Musk and Scott Adams is entirely trained to me. I mean, I was fan number one of Scott Adams when he started this stuff. Because again, as someone who I thought I had the best Trump explanation out in the market back in 2015, 2016, which is that Trump was an artist and wasn't a businessman, wasn't a politician. And part of real creative art is to be offensive. It's to be difficult, to be unpleasant, to be not aesthetics, right? Fiat has created a world where we think beauty is art. It's not true, right? It never was that, right? Art can be beautiful. It ought to inspire some beauty, but it doesn't have to. Part of art is that it is it can be there's a bit of conflict in it, drama, right? The artist is not someone who can self-censor, for example, and weigh their words and things like that. So I said Trump looks more like an artist to me because he's incapable of self-censorship. He's incapable of any of these things. He's got to just come out and say it. And so I would try and describe him like that. What Scott Adams was able to do is say one step further and added a bit of more accuracy to what I was saying. He's an artist. I would say Scott agrees with that entirely. But the art is persuasion. That's what I hadn't really figured out. And that's what Scott Adams understands better than anyone as a psychologist and hypnotist and things like that. That's how I learned about all of these techniques. I knew a lot of them before, right? But Scott is an actual expert in this stuff. And I didn't miss a show for years. I mean, actually years, and was able to, learn a lot from his technique and his way he breaks things down and stuff like that. So no doubt, there's no doubt he's so here's the thing, right? It's between, and I still think Scott Adams has that one blind spot of Bitcoin, right? But he's so close. He's so close, right? He's right on top of it. I just don't think he's neighbors with Naval and Balaji in California. Balaji doesn't live there anymore, but he's had the good fortune of spending a lot of time with these guys, so he's known about it for a long time. But I don't think he's been in tune with it in the past 5 or 6 years, so he's kind of lost maybe sight of it. But I'll get him there. Right? Your speaking technique is clearly influenced by Scott Adams. Clearly, no, clearly. That's why I do my show earlier than him. I don't want to copy him. I can't. He goes at 10 a.m. Eastern. If I went at 11, it wouldn't be good, right? So I actually stopped watching the show as regularly since I started on my own. I still watch it a lot, though. There's no doubt I watch it a lot. But I definitely go earlier. Not that it would be copying. I would just end up falling into his same points. Usually, and it took me about a month to do this last year. I can preempt him on most of it now. Like I get there before him in some ways, but I can anticipate what he's going to say. So, and then again, because the one thing he is lacking is using Bitcoin to tie it all together. He's close, right? He has enough technique to tie it all together. But for example, he'll say things like, "Oh, conservatives don't have a plan for families to get strong again," right? Well, conservatives might not, Bitcoiners do, right? There's a few things that I don't think he's seen in terms of time preference and Austrian school economics. Even though he has an economics degree, I think he hasn't seen it. I don't think he's seen what we just talked about, the contrast of Austrian and Keynesian, and how once you're familiar with the authentic, you don't even have a debate anymore. You can see it, right? I think he's just missing that. I bet you if I spent a half an hour with him, he would be on the team, right? But anyway, the point is the oh, 1 second, I got a child giving me a painting, a drawing. 1 second, sweetie. Can you cut this out? I can cut it out in 1 minute. I'm almost done. Okay, sweetie? Yeah, all right. Right. 1 minute. I'm going to say goodbye to everyone right here, and then I'm going to come. Okay? Promised. So, look, I'll take it's the conquistador argument. I'll take Elon Musk, Donald Trump. It's 1 minute. Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Scott Adams, Mike Benz. I'll take those people over an entire army of these morons. They won't do anything, right? We've got already with Elon on the team, we've got 80% of the tonnage in space. You think they're going to, and the other good news about nuclear, this is why I'm saying everything's going nuclear. Did you see this yesterday? There was my only one other story. I got to get to a daughter, but I'll give you one more nuclear story before we leave. The Space Force, a Trump invention, the beautiful Space Force. They mocked him. They said, they are embracing small modular nuclear technology as of yesterday. That was my other SMR story. So there's the SMR for Bitcoin mining, which happened at the same time as an announcement where Space Force is going to actually integrate small modular nuclear reactors into space, which means Elon's going to put one up there soon. You need it. You can't get around it, right? There you go. All right. Yeah, I've tried, Andre. I almost had him at a Bitcoin event when I was still with CoinDesk in 2019 when he was selling How to Fail at Everything and Still Win Big, the talent stacking book, or was it Loser Think? I don't remember. There was one of the book from 2019. He was doing a New York media tour, and it coincided with my show. I was doing a Bitcoin show that year, right after Thanksgiving. He ended up saying no, and I introduced Eric Weinstein to Bitcoiners at that show. So I only had really money in the end, I guess you could say, to bring one. Right, you got to pay some of these guys. So I only had really money for one. Scott and I had a long chat about it, right? And he wasn't really sure. He doesn't like going out in public, MAGA things, Trump. Your audience might hate me. I said, don't worry about it. They're Bitcoiners. They love you. We came really close, but instead, Eric was game, interested, and it just, him and I started talking on the phone all the time to get him there. He was a little nervous. I got him. And now he's a total Bitcoiner. So we're good, right? How to lose at everything. Yeah, I was right. Yeah, it was epic with Eric. Yeah, and Eric has been a great piece in the industry since then, and so there you go. All right, that's all I got for today. I gotta help that daughter. She needs stuff cut. Thanks for coming, guys. I appreciate it. I'll see y'all tomorrow, and we're winning. Nuclear attacks next, but I don't mean attacks with nuclear bombs, but attacks on nuclear technology, and we'll be good. Get that artwork cut out exactly. Oh, did I show you the? Did I have my thing today? Yeah, it was a good one, huh? That's that's a orange vaccine hazmat suit trying to read the news, right? So that's the survival guide right there. All right, team. Peace.